Welcome back to the CINEMENTAL podcast, where we discuss mental health in cinema, television, and popular culture, and how it is portrayed. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? And what should you know about mental health? I'm Jeffrey Jones, and I'm a screenwriter as well as a professor of screenwriting. And I'm joined, as always, by my brother, America's psychiatrist, Dr. Joshua Jones, who, as well as being the runner-up for Mr. Kelso Washington 2005, is a general and forensic psychiatrist.
And I only lost that because the winner was on performance-enhancing substances, Jeff.
Well, we're going to get into that today, Josh, and talk about whether that's, that's apropos. Good times, good times.
I know. That's why I said it.
We want you to start your week off right with our podcast. So we drop an episode every Monday and also a supplemental episode every Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch our hottest and spiciest clips on YouTube. Today, we're talking about The Substance, the 2024 body horror film that earned Demi Moore lots of Best Female Actor awards, although not the Oscar. And the movie grossed Josh the fuck out. Mm-hmm. Lots to talk about when it comes to mental health. Josh, tell us what we're going to dive into today.
Okay, Jeff, in our first episode this week, we're going to break down the film, of course, and you're going to talk about some of the techniques they use to make it extra stomach-churning.
Yeah.
And we'll also talk about a psychiatric condition called body dysmorphia. In our second episode, we'll look at how The Substance highlights the lengths people will go to co-opt medicine into making themselves look and hopefully feel better. And then finally, we'll switch gears and shred into the socio-political conversation about transgender individuals that has erupted since January, and hopefully stick to some of the medical facts.
I love it. I love it. Cool. Okay, I can't wait to talk about that because body dysmorphia and transgenderism, I don't think are. I think that there's a lot of there's just a lot to talk about.
They're not related.
They're not. That's the thing. They're not related.
Yeah.
Okay, so The Substance, if you haven't seen it, is a darkly satirical and disturbing body horror film that explores the terrifying consequences of our obsession with youth and perfection. The story centers around Elizabeth Sparkle, a fading television personality who, desperate to regain her lost youth and fame, succumbs to the allure of the substance, a black market drug that promises eternal beauty. This seemingly miraculous treatment, however, comes with a horrifying price. Elizabeth must share her body with a younger, more vibrant version of herself named Sue. As Sue revels in her newfound youth and celebrity, Elizabeth is relegated to a secondary existence, trapped within her aging body and forced to endure the torment of watching her younger self thrive. The initial euphoria of rejuvenation quickly deteriorates into a bitter power struggle, with both women vying for control over their shared existence. The film descends into a nightmarish exploration of jealousy, resentment, and the grotesque transformations that occur when the pursuit of perfection becomes a consuming obsession. Ultimately, The Substance serves as a chilling cautionary tale about the dangers of societal pressures, the destructive nature of vanity, and the horrifying price we may pay for clinging to our youth. Josh, tons to get into today. This movie is primarily about body dysmorphia.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the sort of the mental health thing that we're going to talk the most about. There's certain things like jealousy, et cetera, but we haven't talked about body dysmorphia yet. And so I'm really excited to dive into that. Will you just give us a quick definition of what that is to kind of frame the convo?
Yeah, so body dysmorphia or body dysmorphic disorder, it's a mental health condition where a person can't stop thinking about perceived flaws in their appearance.
Okay.
And that's really important, perceived flaws.
Excellent. Okay. Great. Okay. You wanted to ask me a question before we started.
Yeah, just about the making of this movie and the writing, and I mean this was a very interesting movie. It was very there was not a lot of dialogue. It was very sparse dialogue. I've got powerful thoughts about whether I like movies or not.
Sure.
Break it down for me. Was this a good movie, Jeff?
So that's a great question, because there's a massive difference between a bad movie and a movie that's not for you. And it's a really important distinction. And it's not an important distinction for the layman. Like, if you just want to say The Substance was a bad movie because you didn't like it, fine, go with God. But The Substance is an incredible film. It is an incredible film. It's a beautiful film in a way. The structure is perfect. It is in every metric a really well-made movie that was 100% not for me. I did not like this movie. I thought it was gross. Body horror is not my genre. But that doesn't mean that something is a bad movie. And we often conflate the two, unnecessarily. Like, we can just say that something is not for us. But structurally, this movie was perfect. It has a very clear theme. I mean, a really obvious theme.
Sure.
It has an amazing midpoint. I love the twist at the end that the copy tries to make a copy. Like, that's a great moment. And it's like, there's a sort of inevitability to that. But when a writer thinks of that, it's a big aha moment. Like, when you're sitting down to write this movie, it's like, oh yeah, at the end, like, of course the copy has to go through the same horror that Demi Moore's character went through. And generally, this is a rule of thumb, Josh, and it's not always true, but generally, if a movie has less dialogue, it is a better movie, because they're letting the visuals tell the story and they're letting the emotions of the characters tell the story. And there's a whole lot of argument that the director trusts the actor and trusts the story more if there's less dialogue. And I thought that was very apparent with this movie. This was a really well-written film, a beautifully acted film. Demi Moore 100% deserved the Oscar. And that is not to try and, lessen Mikey Madison's flame or anything, but like, I just thought that Demi Moore 100% deserved the Oscar for this in a movie that wasn't for me. So I hope that answers that question a little bit.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the movie also wasn't for me overall. I agree. I thought Demi Moore did an amazing job. Megan Qualley did an amazing job. Dennis Quaid did an amazing job.
Well, I'm not a Dennis Quaid fan, but sure, he did a great job. Margaret Qualley, by the way. Margaret Qualley is one of the great. She's one of the great actresses of any generation. Like, yeah. I think she is spectacular. She's been in so many things that I love. The Leftovers, she was incredible in The Leftovers. She's just having a run. Like, she's doing really, really well.
Here's where, now obviously you're the screenwriter expert, not me, but as a consumer of movies, here's when I think that's really, really good writing. When a movie clearly foreshadows what's going to happen, as they clearly foreshadowed that, the initiative substance was only supposed to be used once. Right. It was a one-stop vial, yet there was some left over. Obviously, there were foreshadowing that it was going to be used again, but it was so well written that by the time it got to that point, I had forgotten they had foreshadowed that so powerfully. Yeah, that's a well written movie. And then when the Monstroso, I can't remember what they called it, when that creature came about, I was like, oh, okay, that's the big twist. That was really well done. That was really
it was
well
Monstroso Elizasu.
It was fantastic. When that card came on the screen, I laughed out loud. That was hilarious.
As a screenwriter, it's really hard to watch film because when someone says, just as an offhanded remark, well, and you really shouldn't do this with it. But anyway, that's coming back, and I'm like, all right, sure. Well, they just told me what the end of the movie is going to be. But you have to set those things up in the first act, and if you could hide them, great. But like, as a screenwriter, you're like, okay, well.
Well, but there was so much else going on. It was so well acted, like you said. I had forgotten that was foreshadowed, and for me, that's a hallmark of a very well written movie. Yeah. Agree. This was a masterpiece that wasn't for me at all. Yeah,
and I do want to get into body dysmorphia sooner rather than later here, but we're starting to get enough comments for what we're putting out that like. I kind of want to address a few of them because I think it's really interesting and I think it's important to have a conversation.
Do you want to do that at the end?
No, I want to do it now.
Okay.
So we got a comment in one of the last shorts that we posted where we talked about veterans. and I'm not gonna. This isn't to shame a commenter. We get a lot of very weird comments. We get a lot of typically, like social media-esque comments.
It's the internet. It's the internet.
But one of the comments the guys made was, we already spend a lot of money on veterans healthcare, and why would we spend so much money? And I'm paraphrasing here, for people who are high school dropouts. I just thought that was an interesting comment, and I looked it up, and like 99.3% of veterans have either a high school diploma or their GED.
Yeah.
And I didn't respond, but I just know that if I was to say GED, people are going to say exactly high school dropouts. Here's the thing about just respect in general, and this has even nothing to do with veterans. If I know nothing about you other than you have your GED, I immediately have respect for you, because it probably means that you made some decisions in your youth that led to leaving high school or not completing high school in the typical way, and you wanted to better yourself, and you were like, hey, that was a mistake, I need to get my GED. It's a harder path to graduating high school than graduating high school. I don't look down on anybody who trying to make themselves better. Isn't that all we want out of humans, is to acknowledge mistakes and then try and better ourselves? If you have your GED, I already have an immense amount of respect.
I'll say this about it. Look, anybody who graduated high school before the pandemic does not understand the variety of options and pathways that there are now to either get through high school or get your GED. And you said that, maybe you made a lot of choices that led to your GED. Most of the people who get their GED, they're not making a lot of choices. They have life situations that happen to them that make it incredibly hard. That being said, there are some folks that choose to get their GED because their life already, they may actually have some really special skill that they're going ahead and pursuing that. It doesn't fit in with a traditional high school, and they go and get their GED. Right. A lot of high schools now have online options. There's a lot of different ways to get this done. So back to the original comment, why we would pay a lot for high school dropouts. Obviously, that's just misinformation. People who go in the military aren't usually high school dropouts, and if they do have their GED, it's usually a life circumstance that went that way. Our men and women who join the armed forces are dedicated to their country. And, I got to say right now, especially right now, folks who are joining up are joining to preserve our country at a time when it's very fraught, I think, politically to do so.
Yeah,
so
it's out of a sense of duty.
But respect.
And even if it's misguided duty, I don't care. Like, they're making a choice that's out of duty. Like, they're doing it for the right reasons. I've got my own issues with the military industrial complex. I've got my own issues politically and how the military is used. Man, I have no issue with veterans. Most are signing up because of a duty. That's painting with a broad brush. I get it, but anyway. So as sort of some of these things come up where I think that there's a mental health component to talk about, I'm going to bring them up. Okay, but that's enough stalling. Let's get into body dysmorphia. Josh, that was a great definition, and I appreciate that. Tell me the difference, though, between body dysmorphia and body alteration, body adaptation. And is there a difference?
Yeah, there's absolutely a difference. So I think what you mean body alteration is somebody going and having something done to their body, like plastic surgery or something like that, correct? Is that what you mean?
Even a piercing.
A piercing, something like that, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the activity of altering your body can be done for a wide variety of reasons. Body dysmorphia just being one of them, and we do see people with body dysmorphic disorder trying to change their appearance because of their perception of it, and that's really what's important. It's their perception of the flaws in their appearance. Any flaws may be minor or non-existent to others. They may not see them at all. But the person experiences them and causes them such significant distress that it can lead to repetitive and damaging behaviors like hair pulling, skin picking, mirror checking, seeking constant reassurance, or even going so far as to get often repeat surgical procedures done to try to make their appearance better, to try to chase something that's not going to happen because it's an alteration in the way that they're perceiving themselves.
I know you can't diagnose someone unless you've spoken to them directly. Do you know if Michael Jackson was ever diagnosed with body dysmorphia?
I don't know for a fact. I know that was a common, common opinion of
guess.
him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. And I know, and I don't ever want to cross that line because I think it's an important ethical line to not diagnose someone, that you haven't. But I
have seen evaluated and treated people who try to change their appearance in sometimes dramatic ways.
Yeah.
Skin lightening is one of them. I have seen that, having multiple plastic surgeries to try to achieve not even the perfect appearance, right, like was portrayed in this movie, but to satisfy something inside of them that isn't quite a delusion, which is a fixed false belief, but it borders on that. You can't convince somebody with body dysmorphic disorder necessarily that there isn't anything wrong with them. It is treatable, though. Body dysmorphic disorder is treatable through a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy and sometimes medications such as SSRI antidepressants can help reduce some of the anxiety that goes along with body dysmorphia to the point that it can become manageable.
Is anorexia a form of body dysmorphia?
We don't consider it as such. We consider it an eating disorder, but there are some parts of both disorders that are similar. The first being this misperception of your body, but anorexia has along with it the either restricting or binging and purging behaviors that classify as anorexia. Are the pathways in the brain the same that get to this altered perception of oneself that you can't be convinced of? Don't know. Probably they share some pathway, but there are some qualitative differences in the two disorders. And anorexia does not respond as well as body dysmorphic disorder to CBT.
Interesting.
And SSRI antidepressants.
Okay, Josh. So at what point in the movie did you know that Demi Moore had dysmorphia?
Yeah, so there was a scene after Demi Moore's character injected half of the vial of the termination fluid into Margaret Qualley's chest, where she stopped herself. She tried to bring her back to life, and she said, "You're the best part of me, or the only good part." She said, "You're the only good part of me."
Yeah.
And that right there was when it crossed the line for me. Like, okay, this is the only thing that you think's good about you. Before
so not
that,
earlier.
I wasn't. No, not earlier. And here's why: because there was too much clouding of, this was just age, and she was feeling, discarded and things like that. I mean, that's a very real thing. When you get older, your body's not the same. There's a lot of regret. I'm feeling it now as I approach 50. It's just it's tough to age, and especially in an industry in which your looks and what your body's like is your calling card.
Sure.
And I'll let you speak more to that. It has to be very tough. But she was into fitness. That was her thing. So
Right.
I could see where body dysmorphia might have been cooking there the whole time, and that was what really sealed it for me.
That's fascinating. So before then, you can chalk it up to other factors, societal pressures, et cetera, but not necessarily specifically what we talk about when we talk body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not it's not a perfect diagnosis for this character. I mean, because really body dysmorphic disorder, you can't stop thinking about the flaws in your appearance. So this was, of course, a fantastical demonstration of that. But I think the allegory fits for sure.
Right.
And when I've had patients with body dysmorphic disorder, they cannot stop talking about, I'm just going to make this up, my face is just flawed, my jawline's just wrong, it's just off, it has to be fixed, it's so hideous, don't look at
Yeah.
me. And you look at the person and you're like, I don't see it, I don't perceive it the way you do.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting that you mentioned that moment too, because there's something called the low point in every movie, and people often think that the low point has to do with the character's like lowest point when they're like down and out during a fight. Okay, where it's like someone's got their hand around their throat and it's like they're just about to lose or die, blah blah. And so we think of that as the low point. That's not the low point structurally. So the low point structurally in a film is when the character has to make a choice. And it's the choice to either change or essentially die. And it goes back to obviously Shakespearean times where tragedies ended in the death of the character. But that moment you're talking about is the low point where Demi's gone through this journey. She's learned that this is not a good idea. She's learned that there is too much at stake. She's learned that it costs her too much. And she has the choice in that moment to end it or continue on. And she makes the tragic choice, which is to not learn the lesson and bring the Margaret Qualley character back to life. And it's fascinating because when it's done really well, it really does feel like a 50-50 choice. There are times in movies where it's like, well, you're obviously going to pick love. You're obviously going to pick, whatever it happens to be. But this was a 50-50 for me, where I'm like, I could totally see her being at the end of her rope here. And it's almost, I don't see her making the choice to save Margaret Qualley and bring her back to life, but she does. And obviously for a film like this, it's a body horror movie, it's going to be a tragedy. But this was a really good low point. This was a really well done. This is why I say like this was a good movie, even if it wasn't my thing. Like it was really structurally very, very good.
I also like that point because, look, the whole thing's fantastical. It's science fiction, it's horror and things like that. But that moment she makes a decision to bring Margaret Qualley back, the whole movie goes off the rails.
Yeah.
And clearly intentionally, right? Because that's when the creature is created. That's when the creature throws on the grotesque mask and then goes and then becomes the blood hose onto the entire crowd. I mean, it was over the top. It was fantastical. It was gory, but it was so satirical. I was like, okay, I mean, this isn't my thing, but I can see why you dove headlong into, all right, let's get farcical with
It's
it.
funny. I didn't love the final shot where she drags herself to her own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
I didn't either. I didn't quite get it.
It's just the final act of like clinging to her stardom.
Sure.
But it was just a little, it was a little ham-handed to me. And it's like, but this is a satire. It's obviously over the top, so it's fine. But I was like, okay, all right. All right, good job. I didn't need it, but I get it, But then they took it a step further and they like just wiped her away, with the Zamboni. It's not a Zamboni, but whatever the hell that thing's called. Just the street sweeper.
It's just called a street sweeper, but from now on, it is the street Zamboni to me.
Zamboni's such a good word. It's a shame there's such a limited use of it.
That scene though, Jeff, where her face crawls back to the star, I did think during that scene, I was like, wow, Demi Moore got robbed, because that facial acting there, she was great the whole time. Whole time.
This is the thing. She did everything. And again, I don't want to talk poorly about Mikey Madison, because Mikey Madison did an incredible job.
Of course.
But I will say this, when it comes to accents, the Jersey accent is kind of like the Southern accent or like a cowboy accent. It's pretty easy to do. It's not considered like, that difficult of an accent. So like, I just thought Honora was good. I didn't think it was, worthy of every single award. And this was a movie I hesitated to watch with The Substance, and I'm glad we did, because I got to see Demi Moore's incredible performance of an amazing lifetime. She has put in some incredible performance. She was amazing in G.I. Jane. But we saw her at the height of her powers, and so to lose to something that I didn't think was as good. I mean, this is to me is like Shakespeare in Love beating out Saving Private Ryan. Like it's just I don't know. I don't
That
know
never that didn't happen.
Yeah, right. Okay, so last question for you, Josh, before we wrap up this segment. It just feels like a lot of the times when we talk about disorders, we really walk a fine line. So how do people know if they're trending towards body dysmorphia or if they just, like I hate how heavy I am right now. And I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, you schlubby bastard, like lose some weight. And it's terrible self-talk. I don't think I'm close to body dysmorphia. And Mariev's like, you look great. I don't know what you're talking about. Where is the line, and how do people know that they're trending towards something that they need to get professional help for?
Jeff, you and I have talked about this from the moment the podcast started. And I've been throwing around body dysmorphia and body dysmorphic disorder as if they're synonyms. And they're really not. Body dysmorphia is the feeling that your body or some part of your body is defective when it really isn't to everybody else. Okay. Body dysmorphic disorder is when those thoughts, those feelings, the behavior you have around that start to impact you in one or more spheres of functioning. That's, of course, when we say it crosses into a disorder. So if you're having feelings about, that your body's not right, things like that, that's actually kind of normal. When it starts to edge more into I'm thinking about it constantly, I'm talking about it with my spouse, I can't be convinced otherwise.
Right.
And it's impacting my behavior, then that's when we call it a disorder. Body dysmorphia is a lot more common in people than body dysmorphic disorder, because a lot more people are having those feelings and they're not impacting their behavior or really causing them significant distress. So it's not a disorder. That's the difference. And that's always the difference when we talk about disorders.
Yeah. Can you put it in more specific? Because I hear you, and that's a great definition. We could put that on a T-shirt. But can you give me some specifics when it comes to body dysmorphic disorder? I know you talked about like hair pulling, things like that. But are there more specific ones you've seen with body dysmorphia? Disorder.
Yeah, the thing that I have really seen is when people, especially in our society, we'll talk more about this in the second part, are going out and trying to reshape their body in some way, in a way that doesn't make sense to others and may in fact be harmful to them. For instance, going and getting plastic surgery on the same body part over and over and over again to try to get it just right, when in fact, once you've crossed into that disorder, you're never going to get it just right, because it's not an actuality thing. It's a perception thing.
And I think we're going to talk about we're going to talk about plastic surgery on Thursday, right?
We are. We're going to talk about all the ways that folks co-opt medicine.
Can you give me just a tease as to whether or not someone who gets plastic surgery, period, has body dysmorphic disorder?
No.
Okay. Okay.
No.
Oh, interesting.
No.
Okay, great.
We'll talk more about we'll talk about plastic surgery on Thursday.
Great. Okay, I love it. Okay, then yeah, I think that's it for us today. Just before we go, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about the substance, later in the week. God damn, Demi Moore, great job! Just fantastic, fantastic job. Great job, Margaret. Qualley, just great job, everybody, for a movie that wasn't my thing. Just fantastic. Yeah.
Another thing that just made it not my cup of tea, but I really appreciated, was all the close-up shots of insects and the shrimp that Dennis Quaid was eating, and all those really close-up shots really grossed me out. I saw the purpose of it. I was like, this is art. This is art.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, it's just not for me. Okay, thanks as always for watching and listening to CINEMENTAL and our coverage of The Substance. If you like this episode, please subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also watch clips of CINEMENTAL on YouTube, where we'd love to hear what movie you would like us to cover next. You can also watch my companion series, The One Thing, where I take a deeper dive into screenwriting. Both are available on the Large and in Charge channel on YouTube. Follow Dr. Joshua Jones, America's Psychiatrist, on Blue Sky. Those links can be found below. This has been a Large and in Charge Charge production. For Josh Jones, I'm Jeff Jones, and we will see you later in the week.